Picture this. You're sick, really sick. Your lungs are giving out. Every breath feels like you're breathing through wet concrete. A doctor tells you there's a place, a hospital up on a hill outside Louisville, Kentucky. Fresh air, rest, nurses, the best care available. So they take you there. You go through the front doors, you look around. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you start to wonder how many people in this building are going to walk back out. Because at Waverly Hills Sanatorium, at the height of the tuberculosis epidemic, people were dying at a rate of 1 per hour. And the bodies, they didn't leave through the front door. They left through a tunnel, a long, dark, underground tunnel, built specifically so the living patients wouldn't have to watch the dead go by. Welcome to Waverly Hills, where the building is still standing, the tunnel is still there, and some say not everyone inside has left. Welcome back to Wilderness Screams, where we explore the places most people walk past without knowing what happened inside. I'm your host, and tonight we're going to Louisville, Kentucky, to a 5-story building on a hill that has been called one of the most haunted places in the entire United States. But before we get to the ghost stories, and there are a lot of them, we need to talk about the real history. Because what actually happened at Waverly Hills is, honestly, scarier than any haunting. Thousands of people checked in, many never checked out, and the ones who didn't, they left through a tunnel that was deliberately built to keep their deaths hidden from everyone else. Let's start from the beginning. To understand Waverly Hills, you have to understand tuberculosis. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, TB was everywhere. They called it the White Death, the White Plague, the consumption, because it seemed to consume you from the inside. Your lungs would slowly fill with fluid. You'd cough. You'd lose weight. You'd get weaker and weaker until you couldn't get out of bed. And there was no cure. The bacteria spread through the air, a cough, a sneeze, breathing the same room as someone infected. Entire families were wiped out. Entire towns. It didn't care if you were rich or poor, young or old. In 1900, Louisville, Kentucky had the highest tuberculosis death rate in America. Part of it was geography. Louisville sits in the Ohio River Valley, a low, swampy area where air doesn't move well. The White Death settled in there like a fog that wouldn't lift. By 1906, the city was desperate. They established a board of tuberculosis hospital and started looking for a location to build a dedicated facility. Somewhere isolated, somewhere with fresh air, somewhere the infected could be contained. They found a hill just southwest of Louisville. High ground, open space, good airflow. In 1908, construction began. In 1910, the Waverly Hills Tuberculosis Hospital opened. It was a modest 2-story building, designed for 40 to 50 patients. Within a year, it was overflowing. The original building couldn't keep up with the epidemic. By the early 1920s, Jefferson County was dealing with a full-scale tuberculosis crisis. Hundreds of new patients every month. So they built a new one. In 1926, a brand new Waverly Hills Sanatorium opened on the same hill. 5 stories, 180,000 square feet, a sprawling, boomerang-shaped building that could be seen for miles. It was almost entirely self-sustaining. On-site power plant, a working farm with fields and livestock, a butcher shop, a post office, a nurse's dormitory, even a ballroom for entertainment because patients were expected to be there for months, sometimes years. The treatment philosophy of the time was fresh air, rest, and isolation. There was no antibiotic, no vaccine. Doctors tried things that today sound barbaric, surgically collapsing a patient's lung to rest it, removing ribs, filling the chest cavity with material to keep the lung from expanding, electroshock therapy for patients whose TB had spread to their brain. Most of it didn't work, and people died, every day, every week, every month for decades. At the peak of the epidemic, it's estimated that one person died inside Waverly Hills every single hour. Let that sink in. The total number of deaths is still debated. Estimates range from 6,000 to over 60,000 depending on the source and how you count. What we know for certain is that thousands of people came through those doors and never went home. And administrators had a problem. Because when patients watched bodies being carried out through the main hallways, through the corridors where they ate, where they rested, where they tried to hold onto hope, morale collapsed. People gave up. They stopped fighting. So they built the tunnel. Officially, it was called the Medical Supply Tunnel. It ran from the basement of the sanatorium all the way down the hill to a set of train tracks at the bottom, about 500 feet long, built into the slope of the earth. Originally designed so that supplies could be brought up on a motorized rail system without disturbing patients. But it became something else. When someone died at Waverly Hills and they died constantly, the body would be brought down to the basement morgue, placed on a cart and sent down through that tunnel, away from the eyes of the living, down the hill, into a waiting hearse at the bottom. Patients never had to see it. They just noticed that someone was gone from their room and didn't come back. The tunnel got a new name, the one everyone uses today. The Body Chute. It's still there, you can walk into it. The entrance is in the basement of the building. It descends at a steep angle into the dark. The walls are crumbling concrete. The air is cold and still. People who have walked the full 500 feet describe the feeling as wrong. Like the darkness is thicker than it should be. Like the silence has weight. Paranormal investigators who have spent time in the Body Chute report voices. Footsteps behind them when no one else is there. Shadow figures at the far end of the tunnel. And most commonly, the overwhelming feeling that something is following them. More than a few have turned around and run. Pause. Now here's where I have to be honest with you about something. Because this is a true history channel, and the history is complicated. The most famous ghost story at Waverly Hills involves a single room. Room 502, 5th floor. The legend goes like this. In 1928, a nurse who worked on the 5th floor was found hanging from a light fixture in room 502. She was young. Some versions of the story say she was pregnant, unmarried, desperate. The second legend says that years later, another nurse threw herself from the roof patio outside the same room. These stories have been told for decades. Ghost hunters come specifically to investigate room 502. Many report unexplained cold spots, voices, the feeling of being watched. Here's the honest part. No official records have been found confirming either suicide. The hospital records from that era are incomplete. The names, the dates, the circumstances, none of it has been verified. Does that mean it didn't happen? Not necessarily. Record keeping in the 1920s and 30s, especially for deaths that might embarrass an institution, was often incomplete by design. What we know for certain is this. Room 502 has had a reputation since at least the mid-20th century. Staff who worked there when it was still operating spoke about the room in hushed tones. Something about that floor felt different to people who spent time there. Whether it's residual energy from decades of suffering, or simply the power of a story told over and over again in a dark building, Room 502 remains one of the most investigated locations in American paranormal history. In 1943, a scientist named Albert Schatz isolated an antibiotic called streptomycin. It was the first drug that could actually treat tuberculosis. By 1949, it was being administered at Waverly Hills. The patient population started shrinking, slowly at first, then faster. By the late 1950s, the building that had once housed hundreds of dying patients was nearly empty. In 1961, Waverly Hills Sanatorium officially closed as a tuberculosis hospital. The remaining patients were transferred to a nearby facility. The building sat empty for a year. Then, in 1962, it reopened as a nursing home, renamed Woodhaven Geriatric Center. And this chapter of the building's history is darker than most people know. The nursing home era was plagued by budget cuts, understaffing, and allegations of patient mistreatment. Electroshock therapy, falling out of favor elsewhere, was still being used here. Patients lived in deteriorating conditions. Reports of neglect accumulated. Woodhaven Geriatric Center closed in 1981. And then the building went silent. For 20 years, Waverly Hills sat abandoned on its hill. Vandals broke in. Teenagers dared each other to spend the night. The floors rotted. The walls crumbled. Nature started taking back the corridors. In 2001, a couple named Charlie and Tina Mattingly purchased the property. They've spent the years since working to restore and preserve it. Today, Waverly Hills is on the National Register of Historic Places. It's open for tour, including overnight paranormal investigations. Waverly Hills has been investigated by virtually every major paranormal team in America. The Travel Channel, Ghost Adventures, and dozens of independent investigators have spent nights inside. Here's what gets reported consistently across different groups who don't know each other. On the 4th floor, a small boy, sometimes seen rolling a ball down the hallway, always alone, always disappearing before anyone can reach him. In the Body Chute, shadow figures, voices, the sound of something moving in the dark when no one else is there. On the roof, a woman in white standing at the edge, sometimes seen from outside the building, gone when anyone gets close. And throughout the building, doors slamming in rooms with no windows, footsteps in empty corridors, the unmistakable feeling described by almost everyone who spends the night that the building is aware of you. Whether you believe in hauntings or not, something about Waverly Hills does something to people. Even hardened skeptics who go in ready to disprove everything tend to come out quieter than they went in. Maybe it's the weight of all that history, thousands of people who suffered there, who died there, who left through a tunnel in the dark. Or maybe it's something else entirely. Waverly Hills Sanatorium is still standing on that hill in Louisville. You can book a tour. You can walk the hallways where TB patients spent their final months. You can descend into the Body Chute, all 500 feet of it, and feel what it feels like to walk the same path the dead were taken. Some people come out and say it's just an old building, interesting history, a little eerie but nothing more. Other people come out and don't talk much about what they saw. What I know for certain is this: that building held thousands of people at their most desperate, at their most afraid, in pain, isolated from their families with no cure and no way out. That kind of suffering leaves a mark on a place. Whether that mark is paranormal, that's for you to decide. I'm your host. This has been Wilderness Screams. Tune in, turn off the lights, and don't go walking down any dark tunnels alone.